Now part 4 of the video. Let's talk about the differences and similarities between Ron Rivera's 4-3 defense he ran in Carolina and Jack Del Rio's defense he ran in Denver. Now going to analyze the way Jack Del Rio's defenses looked in Oakland, because as a head coach he let the other coaches scheme and call the defense. The Broncos is the most recent time Jack Del Rio had a 100% imprint and hand on how the defense looked and operated, which was his most recent defensive coordinator position. And I also conclude this section with how we should expect the Redskins 4-3 defense to look in 2020. Now let's start with how Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio's 4-3 defenses are the same. First of all, they both usually employ one gap systems for their defensive linemen. Just like we discussed earlier, that's when the defensive lineman is head up on gaps instead of head up on blockers pre-snap. And they attack that gap rather than attacking the blocker in front of them and having to be aware of what's going on in two different gaps at the same time. So instead of having to hesitate and read, they can just attack and be more disruptive. Our interior defensive linemen will be far more impactful now, putting up much better stats instead of eating up blocks so the linebackers can make plays, which is what the 3-4 defense is built on. They can actually go make plays themselves now. So expect one or more Redskins defensive linemen to have Pro Bowl level seasons, and expect all of them to have their most productive seasons of their careers. Also, both of them have dabbled in 3-4 defenses, but they both primarily use 4-3 defenses. And even when they use 4-3 defenses, which almost always implement two gap systems, they both utilize one gap systems, which is great news for the defensive linemen. I know Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, Tim Settle all love this. And now coverage-wise, they both run fairly simple. And now coverage-wise, both of them make their coverages and defenses as easy to understand as possible, which allows their defenders to play more proactive and fast rather than overthinking things, which causes our defenders to play slower and with less confidence like they have been for the past few years under Greg Minuski with his overcomplicated defenses. Both Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio barely blitz at all and rely on their front four to apply pressure and get to the quarterback on a consistent basis, which presents a big need for a dominant front four and a special someone from Ohio State. Now let's talk about how they differ. And shouts out to Mark Bullock of The Athletic for a few of these pictures. Rivera for the most part used the 4-3 over front, while Jack Del Rio mostly used the 4-3 under front. Like I spoke about earlier, Rivera's 4-3 over front shifts the D-line towards the strength of the defense, while Jack Del Rio's 4-3 under front shifts the D-line towards the weak side of the defense, and with the Sam linebacker essentially coming down as an edge rusher and the defensive end becoming a defensive tackle really. The interesting thing about the way Jack Del Rio runs his 4-3 under is that it's so close to being a 3-4 defense how it's ran that the transition from the 3-4 personnel we've had on the Redskins roster won't have such a hard time transitioning to the 4-3. Maybe after we start to get more 4-3 type of players, whether it be through the draft or free agency, then Jack Del Rio may start to run more wide 9 or Ron Rivera's 4-3 over or even just 4-3 base. But for now, the 4-3 under will definitely be a great fit with us transitioning, going from the 3-4 to the 4-3 for the first time since Mike Shanahan hired Jim Haslett as the defensive coordinator in 2010. When Jack Del Rio ran his 4-3 under front, Von Miller was the Sam linebacker, but he was technically a 3-4 edge rusher because he was down right at the line of scrimmage, allowing him to do what he does best, rush the passer. But because he was the Sam linebacker by name, he would still occasionally have to drop back in coverage, which could be a big problem because both Redskins players and fans are tired of their best pass rushers dropping back in coverage. So having a special somebody from Ohio State dropping back in coverage would enrage everybody, including me. So more than likely, somebody else will end up being that Sam linebacker, and that special someone from Ohio State will just be a defensive end. Also, unlike Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio used TJ Ward as a hybrid safety linebacker type of role. When in dime and nickel packages, normally safety TJ Ward would come down as a linebacker. In nickel packages, when TJ Ward came down as a linebacker with the mic, there could be 4 defensive linemen and 5 defensive backs. The 5 defensive backs is why it's called a nickel package, and when it's 6 defensive backs, it's called a dime package, for those of y'all who don't know. This hybrid safety linebacker role is an obvious place for Landon Collins, or Josh Harvey-Clemens if Jack Del Rio wants to use him a lot. But I'm going to dive deep into that later on when I'm talking about how Redskins players fit into the 4-3 defense. Now, coverage-wise, Ron Rivera prefers zone coverage a lot, while Jack Del Rio prefers man coverage mostly. Jack Del Rio loved cover one, which requires an almost elite free safety. You need a safety with elite range and football IQ. In cover one, the free safety is literally responsible for everything deep, sideline to sideline. The free safety is the last line of defense. He has to keep everything in front of him or it's a touchdown, easily. Cover one also requires great coverage corners and linebackers, especially the corners. They will basically be on islands with receivers in man coverage. They have to lock down the receivers because if more than one of them get beat deep, the free safety will have to decide which receiver to go help against, which would leave one or more receivers open deep for an easy touchdown. So the outside corners have to be great and dependable in man coverage. This picture here is a version of the cover one that is literally all man. The strong safety comes down to be responsible for a receiver or tight end. The will is responsible for a receiver or tight end. And then the two linebackers in the middle, more than likely the Sam linebacker, are responsible for an extra receiver, tight end, or running back. This isn't an exact cover one coverage that Jack Del Rio runs, but I just wanted to explain what cover one meant, and why it requires such great cover corners and linebackers and an elite range free safety. But Jack Del Rio is more likely to run a cover one that looks like this. In the 4-3 under that we were just talking about a little while ago, he has the free safety in a high cover one zone, of course. The outside corners are man covering the outside receivers. The strong safety starts out not as deep as the free safety, but not as close to the line of scrimmage as the linebackers, and he covers the inside slot receiver. The Sam linebacker near the top of the screen is covering the tight end in man coverage. The Mike linebacker is responsible for the running back that may not even run a route. And then the Will linebacker, who makes this cover one interesting, goes and covers the middle zone below the free safety. The free safety is still solely responsible for everything deep, but the Will linebacker helps out by covering everything in the middle range of coverage. This version of the cover one is very advantageous because the previous cover one I just showed y'all didn't have that extra zone coverage person who is the Will linebacker in this picture that covers that little middle area that was very susceptible to crossing routes where the corners end up getting picked and are unable to keep up with their receivers. But in this formation with the Will linebacker and that short zone coverage, there's some help for the corners who get beat by crossing routes. The only weakness to this formation is that it's extremely dependent on smart and great coverage corner safeties and linebackers. The strong safety, who is usually asked to blitz, play in the box, or go in zone coverage, is now asked to just straight up man cover somebody that is as quick as a slot receiver, which is crazy. Definitely need a very versatile, strong safety to run that role. And like I said earlier, the two outside corners have to be very good man cover corners. Press man cover corners that can jam wide receivers up at the line are a bonus. And then you also need linebackers who can cover well and consistently, especially the Sam linebacker, who is usually pass rushing but is now being asked to man cover the tight end. Also, the Mike linebacker may either be asked to cover the running back if he runs out on a route, or may be asked to blitz, which requires a lot of speed and great timing, and the strength to fight off blocks to get to the quarterback if the Mike gets picked up by a lineman. This cover one requires very versatile players all over the field. Strong safeties that are best at stopping the run have to go in man coverage, kind of the same with the linebackers. They are the best at stopping the run, but now one or two of them has to man cover and the other one has to cover a zone. That is true versatility. And if you don't have the correct personnel to get the most out of this formation, offenses will attack the obvious weaknesses and expose the specific player's specific versatility deficiency. It can either be a great formation in coverage or a terrible one. There's really no middle ground. And then shouts out to Mark Bullock of The Athletic for this picture also. This is another cover one scheme. This one is great because it has two high safeties, so it allows Jack Del Rio to disguise the fact that he's even running a cover one. Offenses will usually assume he's running a cover two, with each of the two safeties being responsible for a deep half. But instead, the free safety or strong safety takes the deep zone by himself, and the other safety takes the underneath zone that the Will linebacker was responsible for in the previous picture. And it looks like they are in a nickel package with 5 DBs, which means there's more than likely a slot corner in there responsible for man covering the slot. The other two corners have the same responsibilities of each man covering an outside receiver. The two linebackers are both in man coverage, one responsible for man covering the tight end and the other responsible for covering the running back if he goes out on a route. And of course, the 4 defensive linemen are just tasked with going to go get the quarterback. And those are only 3 examples of cover 1 man packages. There are all kinds of ways you can run cover 1 man or cover 1 zone. But there are 2 ways that Jack Del Rio will more than likely run it in Washington. And cover 1 man is great because it makes sure every offensive player who can even possibly end up with the ball is accounted for, plus 1 or 2 extra players in zone coverage to help the others who are in man coverage. There will never be a blown coverage or miscommunication like the Redskins have had plenty of the past few years. Everybody has clear responsibilities, so it allows players to play with confidence, aggression, speed, and familiarity, which allows the players to play at their highest level and their best more consistently. They aren't spending seconds or even split seconds trying to figure out what to do, which can be the difference between an interception or a touchdown. Like literally, responsibilities are clear and players are able to play with comfort. But the 4-3, especially Jack Del Rio's cover 1 man defense, is at the same time highly demanding of great talent. You don't have the talent the system needs, it fails, which has pretty much been the theme about everything as far as the 4-3 defense goes, no matter which formation or coverage you run. The 3-4 defenses can make up for lack of talent, while the 4-3 defenses can have the highest potential to be the deadliest defenses, but are so dependent on talent. They can also have the worst defenses if the right talent isn't there and used correctly by smart and experienced coaches. So highest ceiling, lowest floors. That's what you get with the 4-3 defenses, especially the ones Jack Del Rio runs. And shouts out to Mark Bullock of The Athletic for this final picture right here. All of his pictures come up on Google Images when I search for specific types of defenses, and I could have made circles and squares for all y'all to look at, but I feel like y'all would prefer to see real players in these scenarios. So shouts out to Mark Bullock for a couple of these pictures I used. But back to what I was saying. The same sort of goes with Ron Rivera's zone coverage packages, like this one on the screen, as far as being dependent on high-level talent, but at the same time having high potential. And I could dive deep into all of the different zone coverage packages Ron Rivera ran in Carolina, but it will more than likely be pointless as far as the Redskins goes. I mean, with their immediate release of Josh Norman, who is best in zone coverage and terrible in man coverage, we can tell that the Redskins will more than likely favor man cover corners, which are best utilized within Jack Del Rio's man coverage packages. So since I'm assuming that Jack Del Rio will have the vast majority of say and influence on what the Redskins defense will look like here on out, especially after Ron Rivera said that he will focus on time management and personnel decisions, and he will let his assistant coaches do their jobs and have full control. Just like how Scott Turner will run the offense and call plays, Jack Del Rio will do the same on the defensive side. So because Jack Del Rio will have almost complete control, or maybe even just complete control 100% over the defense, Ron Rivera's zone coverages won't matter, so I won't dive deep into them. Jack Del Rio will more than likely not run them. And even if the Redskins don't currently have the players they need to run Jack Del Rio's man coverage packages well, Ron Rivera, Kyle Smith, and Jack Del Rio will work together to bring those players in through free agency or the draft. So don't worry about the fact that the Redskins don't have the players yet. They will get the players within these next few months. Just because we may not have enough versatile linebackers or enough great man cover corners to run Jack Del Rio's defense yet, doesn't mean we won't by the time the regular season starts. So don't panic. Now let's discuss how current Redskins players fit into how Jack Del Rio will run his defense and even some other defenses that he may not even run, but we can look at those scenarios just in case. Part 5. What can we expect the Redskins defense to look like in 2020? Well, if we were to run a 4-3 base, it would look like this. This base 4-3 is the very basic form and is usually when the defense doesn't know whether the offense is running or passing. It just simply puts the best overall, most well-rounded players on the field, instead of putting players who are best at one or two specific things in specific spots like the other 4-3 defense formations. This is more like a 1st and 10 defense that is built to be good at stopping both the run and the pass, rather than being great at stopping one or the other but being weak towards the other one. For this, Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are the most well-rounded interior defensive linemen on the team, so they would start in the middle of the front four. They can both play the run and rush the passer well. Matt Ioannidis is the best out of the three at rushing the passer, so he's built best for obvious passing downs. Tim Settle is also disruptive, but he's best as a depth piece or coming in to start in goal line situations. Moving on, Montez Sweat and Ryan Kerrigan are the best edge rushers currently on the roster, so they would complete the front four, with each of them being on the outside. Since the will linebacker in the basic 4-3 is supposed to be the best coverage linebacker, Shondion Hamilton is the best option here. Josh Harvey Clemens is probably our best pure coverage linebacker, as he used to be a safety in college, but he hasn't proven to be reliable enough in run defense to be on the field in any situation other than 3rd and long. And just to let y'all know, Pro Football Focus gave Shondion Hamilton the 2nd highest coverage grade out of all NFL linebackers with at least 250 snaps in 2019. But since Shondion Hamilton is also the smartest player in our defense, it would make a lot of sense for him to start at Mike linebacker. But in order for us to have our 3 best linebackers on the field, Shondion Hamilton will have to play the will so Cole Holcomb can play the Mike. Cole Holcomb is one of the fastest, if not the fastest linebackers on our roster as far as getting sideline to sideline in run defense. So his skill set is best suited for the run defense responsibilities of a Mike. Now his coverage skills still need a lot of work, like a lot of work. Pro Football Focus gave him a 43.3 coverage grade, which was 19% worse than John Bostic and over 46% worse than Shondion Hamilton. So he needs to improve there for when we need his coverage in certain situations. But in this basic 4-3, he probably won't be asked to cover a lot, and even when he is, it probably will just be to hold down a small area in zone coverage so his weaknesses won't get exposed. And then as for Sam linebacker, Ryan Anderson would be the best fit. He improved mightily in coverage, especially against tight ends towards the end of last season. He also improved mightily in pass rushing. And since the Sam linebacker is the best pass rushing linebacker out of all of the off-ball linebackers, because he will occasionally be asked to do so, Ryan Anderson is perfect for the Sam role. For those of y'all sleep on Ryan Anderson, he finished 4th in the entire NFL in forced fumbles with 5. But he only started 4 games all season. Don't sleep on that man. And then as far as Nate Orchard, I love him as a depth Sam linebacker. His special teams potential is crazy. He's the first to block a punt for the Redskins since 2015. And plus he showed out the game. He got a lot of reps when both Ryan Kerrigan and Ryan Anderson were hurt. So for Nate Orchard and Casanova McKenzie, who are both 3-4 outside linebackers, they will either have to learn how to cover better and become Sam linebackers, or will have to put on weight and become defensive ends. And then as far as John Bostic goes, he's pretty good in run defense and decent in coverage, so he is a nice depth piece, especially for cheap, but he should not start at all though. He does not have the talent to start at any of those linebacker positions in the 4-3. Now Quentin Dunbar and Fabian Moreau are both best in man coverage instead of zone coverage, so they are the best options for Jack Del Rio's man coverage heavy defensive scheme as outside corners. Quentin Dunbar, when healthy, is actually a really good man cover corner. And we started to see some shine out of Fabian Moreau later last season once the Redskins finally put him where he belonged at outside corner. He still had some hiccups, but instead of forcing him to play out of position in the slot, which he didn't do in college, giving him a full offseason of preparation and practice at outside corner should bring the best out of him. His best may not be very good, I'm not banking on it, but we won't know until we know. Now my boy Jimmy Moreland is currently our best slot corner, which means he won't get many snaps unless Jack Del Rio runs a lot of nickel and dime, which he doesn't. But I love Jimmy Moreland's potential and personality, and I want him to compete for one of those outside corner spots. And then for strong safety, Landon Collins is obviously the best option. He's not great in coverage and is great in run defense and blitzing. He's a strong safety through and through. He's at his best when working in the box, which makes perfect sense. And Jack Del Rio will probably use him as a hybrid linebacker slash safety like he used TJ Ward in Denver. And then at free safety, even though I highly doubt this is who we will roll with by the start of the regular season, I highly doubt we even make it to April with him starting at free safety. But right now, Monte Nicholson is the starting free safety. And even though Monte Nicholson never benefited from great coaching that could bring out the best in him, I'm still pretty sure Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith will go with a proven, dependable, very rangy free safety in free agency. Kyle Smith and Ron Rivera emphasized how aggressive they will be this free agency, and I'm pretty sure this is one of the spots they will go spend on. But for now, Monte Nicholson is there. He also keeps having weird, strange situations going on with his life off the field, so I'm also sure Ron Rivera won't stand for that either. And as far as depth goes, the only player that may survive is Troy Apke off the bench because of his rare speed and special teams contribution. If he ever plays on defense, it will only be at free safety. He would be terrible in the box. Oh, and before we move on to how current Redskins players fit into the 4-3 over formation, I didn't forget about Reuben Foster. I just don't trust him to be 100% ready to go by the time the regular season starts. And I'm pretty sure Rivera and Kyle agree. And they will probably add to the position group in the draft and or through free agency. But as far as Foster goes, if he is somehow 100% healthy, he is too talented to keep off the field for any reason. So I can see him taking over the Will linebacker spot. So I could see him taking over the Mike linebacker spot. But since he's really good in coverage and Sean Hamilton has been the brains of the defense since they both played together during their days at Alabama, it would actually be Foster at the Will with his great coverage ability. Plus, he would be able to use his crazy speed to his highest potential. And also, the Will linebacker takes the least hits and big contact out of the linebacker group. So Foster being at the Will would be the best chance of keeping him healthy. And then Sean Hamilton will start at Mike. And I know Cole Holcomb has shown a lot of potential, but when healthy, Sean Hamilton is too versatile and talented to keep off of the field for any reason. He's great in run support, he's one of the best on the team in coverage, and apparently one of the best in the NFL out of all linebackers. And then on top of all of that, he's the smartest linebacker on the roster with the best instincts, the quickest at diagnosing plays, and the best at calling adjustments to everybody on the defense. Literally an on-field coach. Nick Saban said that he really missed having Sean Hamilton in his defense. I mean, you just can't keep a man that versatile and great at very specific things like that off the field. The fact that he didn't start a lot this past season is a true testament to how poorly Greg Minuski managed this defense last year. And then lastly, with Ryan Anderson finally looking worthy of that 2017 top 50 pick that he was, he has to start at Sam. He's our best pass rushing off-ball linebacker, easily. And his big improvement in coverage makes him playing the Sam undeniable. But this is just a scenario that I'm not putting any trust in at all. Just hope. All I will do is hope that this can happen. But I will not have any expectations for this at all. So moving forward with this video, I will not include Reuben Foster in any starting lineup, even though he would easily start if healthy. I mean, picture the Redskins running Tampa 2 the way that the great Buccaneers team did out of the 4-3 under with Reuben Foster started. Reuben Foster at the will allow Sean Hamilton, one of our best coverage linebackers, to take on the difficult task of covering a deep middle, which is something Cole Holcomb can't do at all. I like Cole Holcomb a lot, but without him being able to cover very well, he would be a huge liability in many 4-3 formations and coverage packages. I love him in run defense. He might be our best run defense linebacker out of everybody that's currently on the roster, but his snaps may be limited with all of the different ways Jack Del Rio uses his linebackers, especially for all kinds of coverages like this one on the screen, and especially man coverages. But we'll see. Going forward, like I just said a little earlier, I will assume Reuben Foster won't be healthy for 2020. But we can dream, right? Just wanted to show y'all those two pictures with Reuben Foster included, just as a what it could be. Now, the 4-3 over is literally almost the same as far as personnel as the 4-3 base defense. All of the defensive backs and linebackers are the same, also the edge rushers, but the 4-3 over forces the interior defensive lineman to be in a specific place with a specific role. The nose tackle lined up in the one tech on the weak side of the offense is best for Daron Payne, who is the biggest and strongest out of the three best defensive linemen. And then the defensive tackle lined up in the 3 tech on the strong side of the offense is best for Jonathan Allen. Besides those two, literally everything else is the same as the 4-3 base as personnel goes, but in general, scheme-wise, like I discussed earlier, the front four is shifted towards the strong side of the offense just a little. And now with the 4-3 under, the front four is shifted towards the weak side of the defense, which requires the Sam linebacker to come down and become another edge rusher on the outside of the tight end shoulder. But this 4-3 under Sam linebacker will be asked to cover far more than any defensive end ever will be, no matter what type of 4-3 formation we're in. That's why I still have Ryan Kerrigan as the left defensive end, the one lined up on the strong side of the offense, to the right of the screen, because the tight end will sometimes go run routes as a receiver, and then Ryan Kerrigan will now be the official edge rusher again, as if it's just a base 4-3. But let's take it all the way back to the beginning. The nose tackle and defensive tackle switch sides. Jonathan Allen is now on the weak side of the offense as the defensive tackle, and Daron Payne is now on the strong side of the offense as nose tackle. Montez Sweat is still the edge rusher that is furthest out and is on the weak side, so that the Redskins can take advantage of his elite athleticism and speed. Ryan Kerrigan is still the left end on the strong side, but he is covered up by the Sam linebacker, who is Ryan Anderson. And then that leaves Shondion Hamilton as the Will and Cole Holcomb as the Mike to basically turn into the two linebackers from the 3-4 defense that they ran last year. And this defense overall runs a lot like a 3-4 defense and is a good bridge for the Redskins to take their 3-4 personnel and turn it into 4-3 personnel over time through the draft and free agency. Running a 4-3 under will do the best job of eliminating any growing pains that they may have switching to an entirely new base defense. So expect to see this defense a lot, especially since Jack Del Rio ran this a lot anyway when he could have chosen any defense out of all of them and wasn't worried about any growing pains transitioning from one defense to another personnel-wise. So not only will it be used as a nice buffer between going from the 3-4 to the 4-3, but it's also already a defense that Jack Del Rio loves to run, even if he has his pick of the litter. So again, expect to see a lot of the 4-3 under. And then on obvious passing downs or against 12 personnel, which is an obvious running formation, the Redskins can whip out the wide 9 that the 49ers used a lot last year. It will look way better than this after the draft and free agency period, just like all of the other formations I've shown y'all, but this one especially, so please don't panic. In this formation, with the players we currently have, I have Montez Sweat switching over to the strong side of the offense so that he can take advantage of that wide 9 angle. His elite athleticism and speed would have the best ability out of everybody on the current roster to take advantage of that wide 9 positioning and angle. That 4.41 40 time that he ran that was faster than Tyrann Mathieu, Devin McCourty, Christian McCaffrey, Derwin James, Stephon Diggs, Odell Beckham, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Golden Tate, and Tariq Cohen can be used to put right tackles in terrible positioning to kick out and get in front of them in time. And then I have Jonathan Allen as the defensive tackle on the strong side of the offense, and Daron Payne as the nose tackle on the weak side of the offense, of course. And then I have Ryan Kerrigan as the edge rusher on the weak side, but you can easily place Matt Ioannidis into this spot also. Or if it's a very obvious passing down, you can put Matt Ioannidis where Daron Payne is so that the Redskins have all of their best pass rushers out there personnel-wise. But when it's something like this 12 personnel like you see on the screen, you want your best run stoppers. And that's why Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are in there. And then the linebackers are the usual. Ryan Anderson at the Sam, Cole Holcomb at the Mike, and Shondion Hamilton at the Will. Then you have Landon Collins at strong safety coming down very close to the line of scrimmage to hold down the D gap if the offense is in this 12 personnel like in this picture. And then you have the free safety on an island back deep all by himself. And of course the outside corners are manned up on the outside receivers as usual. And now it's time to have some fun. I want to look at what this team can look like after free agency and the draft, which is part 6 of this video. What this team can look like after free agency and the draft. First, I want to show y'all what the defense could look like if the cap space weren't an issue. But mind you, it won't just be a Pro Bowl defense with all of the greatest players in the NFL on one team. It's still relatively realistic, but it's basically as if the Redskins mostly or only spent its available cap space on defense this free agency. And then I'm going to show y'all what a realistic cap-bound defense could look like where the Redskins spend basically equal amounts of cap money on both offense and defense. So let's get to it. Alright, so here's the best case dream defense scenario. For free safety, I have Justin Simmons from the Broncos because he and Anthony Harris from the Vikings are the 2 top free safeties available in this free agency. With Jimmy Ward a kind of close third, but out of the top 2, Justin Simmons is a little over 2 years younger. So he may not even be his best yet. So I'd say get him for the dream defense. he will be asking for about $14 million a year or more in his next deal. That would make him the second highest player on this entire team, only second to Alex Smith, money-hungry self. But it would also give us the elite safety that Jack Del Rio can use in all kinds of versatile ways. Justin Simmons has the range necessary to run cover one deep zone, which is very hard to find, and he is also well-rounded enough to step up and make tackles in the open field. He is everything you need at free safety, literally everything. But most importantly, he is an elite range free safety that Jack Del Rio can depend on to hold down the last line of the defense. And then for strong safety, of course, I'm going to keep Landon Collins because, first of all, we are already giving him $14 million a year. And also, if there's anybody who can get $14 million a year worth of production out of him, it's Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, who will more than likely use him like a TJ Ward in Denver while Jack Del Rio was a defensive coordinator there. That will showcase all of his best skills and hide all of his glaring weaknesses. Then cornerback-wise, I believe in Quentin Dunbar. When healthy, I believe he is a really good to great corner. I'm not giving him top 5 status like Pro Football Focus, or maybe not even top 10 yet. He hasn't earned that yet. But I definitely see the shutdown corner potential unlike a lot of y'all. From what I've seen reviewing 2019 Redskins film on the All-22, Dunbar was really good while healthy. But the problem is he hasn't stayed healthy yet. But I believe a change in the training staff and the way the Redskins practice under Ron Rivera will help out a lot in that department and give us a Pro Bowl caliber corner we can depend on. And then across from him, I have James Bradberry from the Panthers. He will probably cost between $11 million to $14 million a year, but he will be well worth it, easily. He is the exact type of corner that Jack Del Rio will love. He is a very talented man cover corner that can even press when asked. The Aqib Talib mode, which is exactly what allowed Jack Del Rio to run the defenses that he ran that were heavily dependent on trustworthy man cover corners that can also be versatile enough to cover zones occasionally in Denver. He'll definitely want to do that for the Redskins, if possible, if he gets the personnel to do it. But more specifically and most importantly, James Bradberry has proven that he can cover the other team's number 1 receiver consistently, which would allow Quentin Dunbar to cover the other team's number 2, which isn't even fair. But James Bradberry had to cover Julio Jones twice a season, Mike Evans twice a season, Michael Thomas twice a season, and DeAndre Hopkins last year. He easily had a Pro Bowl caliber season, but his team was overlooked and he didn't secure the necessary amount of votes because his team was losing. Him not making the Pro Bowl is more so the team's fault than his. He definitely had a Pro Bowl caliber season at corner. And even better, James Bradberry wants to reunite with Ron Rivera in Washington. He said so publicly. So if there is a team that he's willing to take some sort of discount for, it's us. A Pro Bowl level man cover corner that Jack Del Rio will fall in love with for below market value? Come on now, that's too obvious. That's a match made in heaven. He wants us and we definitely want him. And now the linebackers. To allow Shondion Hamilton to play the role he's best suited for, which is the Mike, which will allow him to be very versatile, which Jack Del Rio will love, with him stopping the run well, being the brains of the defense, and being a consistently great coverage linebacker. To allow that, I went and got the Redskins' Corey Littleton in free agency from the Rams for a projected $12 million a year. Pro Football Focus graded him as the best tackler out of all defensive players in 2019. That's including linebackers, defensive backs, everybody, regardless of position. But what's even crazier is that his best skill set is his coverage ability. He was one of the best, if not the best, coverage linebackers in 2019. Plugging him in at will wouldn't even be fair. Pro Football Focus rated him the 6th best linebacker in the entire league in 2019. And adding him to this already potentially great defense will make it elite. He is very versatile, which Jack Del Rio loves and needs in his defense, as I've kept regurgitating over and over again throughout this video. At the will, which is where the team's best coverage linebacker should be, Littleton, also being one of the best tacklers, if not the best tackler in the NFL, would allow Jack Del Rio to have fun moving all of his chess pieces around everywhere and confusing offenses. And lastly, you have emerging Ryan Anderson, who can bring a Pro Bowl level of talent to the Sam position. I mean, this man balled out last year in those few games he started. Again, he was 4th in the NFL in forced fumbles, but he only started 4 games. That is crazy. His pass rushing skills have improved dramatically, and his coverage skills have improved a lot. You can trust him to cover the other team's tight end well and consistently. And you can't forget that his best skills coming out of college were edge setting, run stopping, and sure tackling. So that also makes him very versatile. Continuing the theme of this video as far as defensive players go under Jack Del Rio, especially the linebackers. The linebackers have to be versatile. And then my favorite part, the defensive line. The front four. And we don't even have to spend any crazy money to turn this front four into one of the league's best, if not the best. All you have to do is start Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne in the interior, and rotate Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle into the lineup, Matt on obvious passing downs, and settle on goal line. And then after that, all you have to do is move Montez Sweat to the left end position on the offensive strong side, and then simply draft the best player in this year's draft and put him at right end and let him attack from the quarterback's blind spot. And then bring Ryan Kerrigan in as a part of the edge rusher rotation, but on a very cheap restructured contract only. I'm not having Ryan Kerrigan as part of a rotation but getting paid $11.5 million this one season. It's that simple. Chase Young is the best player in college this past year, and at the second most important position in football, edge rusher. Only second to quarterback, which is the most important position in all of sports. He has the same hands, footwork, moves, attack plan counters, and overall technique that the Bosa brothers had coming out of college. But at the same time, he's just as athletic, if not more athletic, than Myles Garrett coming out of college. Like, come on, man. That's not even fair, dog. He has the high floor to be an immediate double-digit sack guy instantly his rookie year, just like the Bosas. I'd be surprised if he doesn't win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But he also has the ceiling to get better and better over time and become a consistent all-pro edge rusher. I've seen fans of teams everywhere just hoping we don't take him. All over Twitter and Reddit. You have fans of the other 31 teams just hoping we trade back. Especially fans of other NFC East teams. My friends who are Cowboys fans all hope we trade back. And if that's what our worst enemies hope we do, then you know it's the wrong move. Take Chase Young, let him hit the ground running, and get to putting fear into opposing quarterbacks every weekend. And please bring back Trent so I can see that matchup in training camp over and over again. I need that. And the best part about drafting Chase Young, he'll be on a rookie contract for the next 5 years, so he'll be ridiculously cheap, but will also be the best / most impactful player on our top 5 defense. Maybe even the best defense in the league if we are able to, for real, sign and draft all of these people that I have right here in front of y'all. And there you have it, my dream 2020 Redskins defense. But what's crazy is that with the cap space we have right now, if we decided to not get a lot of free agents on offense this offseason and prefer to draft offensive weapons like Adam Trautman and Thaddeus Moss at tight end or KJ Hill and T. Higgins at wide receiver to fill those holes, then we could realistically sign all of these players to the contracts that they will be looking for. Especially after we save like $6 million a year restructuring Ryan Kerrigan's contract. This is my dream defense, but like I said, this is actually quite realistic. But we will be having to trust the Redskins can find starting quality wide receiver and tight end talent within the draft's later rounds, which is quite possible. But now let's get to the let's not get our hopes up too high team that's so realistic that I would be shocked if we didn't get this team at the worst case scenario team. Now, before I get to showing y'all what the defense will look like, I want to preface by saying that this defense can look like this if the Redskins choose to go spend a lot of money on offense, like get my favorite wide receiver in free agency this year, Robbie Anderson, for the $10 million per year that he's reportedly seeking, and getting Austin Hooper for the $10 million per year his market value is predicted to be at by SpotTrack.com. And I want to note that I am not willing to pay Austin Hooper market-setting money. He is not that good. He's a better blocker than Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis ever were, but he's not George Kittle at all, not even in the same realm. He's a more dependable receiving target than Jeremy Sprinkle, but he's not Kelsey at all, nowhere near the same realm. I don't want Hooper for anything more than $7.5 million a year. Maybe I'll take like 8. I don't know. Because he's so scheme dependent. And even though I feel like our scheme will be able to get the most out of him like the Falcons did, he's still just not one of those top tier tight ends. But as a worst case scenario, defensively, if we were to go get Robbie Anderson for the $10 million a year that I want, and go get Austin Hooper for the $10 million a year that I don't want, then we would have enough cap space to make this happen. The most realistic scenario, worst case scenario. Trey Boston at free safety is the cheapest great range safety available. His tackling is tragic though, but just as a pure deep cover one free safety, He's a great cheap option. Pro Football Focus graded him the 6th best coverage safety in all of football last year, but his run defense and tackling are pretty tragic. So he can do exactly what Jack Del Rio needs him to do, and that's use his elite range and deep coverage. But he won't be versatile enough like I've preached throughout this video. But as far as doing what free safeties need to do, and that's cover very well, he's done that well with 3 different teams over the past 3 years, which means he's not scheme dependent. And it's crazy because he's the highest graded free safety by Pro Football Focus over that 3-year stretch period. Whether it be free safety, strong safety, everybody. Over that 3-year stretch of him playing on 3 different teams, Pro Football Focus graded him the best safety in the league. But the Redskins will be his 4th team in 4 years, which is kind of crazy. I feel like he could find a home here though, honestly, and finally sign a long-term contract. Or at least something longer than just 1 year. Bro might as well have just Airbnb'd the past few years rather than buying a house until he comes here, where he can finally settle down. And then at linebacker, because we probably wouldn't have enough money to sign Corey Littleton, we would have to move Shondion Hamilton back to the will and have Cole Holcomb with his great run stopping but bad coverage starting at the mic. And of course, Ryan Anderson is still the same at the Sam. And then as far as corners and defensive line, the same remains. I have a strong feeling the Redskins will bring in James Bradberry. He has the potential to cost up to $14 million a year, but I'm also pretty sure he'd be willing to take a small discount to play for a little less with a team that he really wants to play on. Plus, with more well-known and proven options out there like Byron Jones, Chris Harris, Jimmy Smith, and many others, he shouldn't be asking for too much money. I don't think there's a huge market out there for James Bradberry fighting each other over the chance to sign him, so we should be able to get him for a contract that makes both parties happy. And then, of course, we need to draft Chase Young. That's no matter what else is going on. But then, just because I'm already here, I also want to throw in a happy middle scenario that is also very possible, but looks a lot better than this worst case realistic scenario I'm showing y'all right now. Here's the happy middle great scenario. So in this scenario, we don't get Austin Hooper, mostly because I already know he's going to be asking for money that's overpaying his talent level. And I don't want that. And I doubt Ron Rivera, Kyle Smith, and Scott Turner will want that also. I'll take him for cheap, but I highly doubt he's going to be willing to take a cheap contract. And then also part of this scenario, we may or may not sign Robbie Anderson for the $10 million a year he's asking for, which I do want us to do. But whether or not we sign Robbie or not, we will still have enough cap space to make this defense. And most noteworthy, Jimmy Ward from the 49ers at free safety for $8 million a year, which he's projected to get, is a great option. But be careful with him because he's had a very injury-riddled past. But last year, he finally stayed healthy for most of the year and finally started in 13 games and was Pro Football Focus's 6th highest graded safety in all of football, which is elite status. But last year was the first time he was able to stay healthy and have a great year. He lasted all the way down the stretch, so his injury problems may be behind him, but definitely proceed with caution when signing him. But at his best and healthiest, he is definitely better than Trey Boston. But he's not quite as talented as Anthony Harris and Justin Simmons, and he also has more injury concerns than those two. So he's like right in the middle, even though Trey Boston is more dependable health-wise than Jimmy Ward. But also not as talented and nowhere near as dependable as far as run stopping and stepping up to make tackles. And then there's James Bradberry at corner again for $11 million a year. And also Corey Littleton at will linebacker again for the $12 million a year, which would allow Shondion Hamilton to move back to the mic where he can be the most impactful and versatile he can possibly be. This starting defense will be crazy, and it's around $7 million a year cheaper than the Dream defense. And the rotation will be crazy too. Matt Ioannidis, who has been our most efficient defensive lineman, Tim Settle, who should be starting on another team, Pro Bowl Ryan Kerrigan only if he's willing to restructure his contract, Nate Orchard has a bright future. Can't forget about Jordan Brailford, Fabian Moreau, and Jimmy Moreland. And then the very promising Corey Holcomb. All his depth pieces? That is crazy depth. Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio will have so much fun with this defensive potential. And the crazy thing is, this is actually very possible. This defense here would take us from $62 million in cap space to $34. And we could have way more money in cap space if we ended up trading away Trent, who is asking for a big contract, as reported today, as in Thursday. And if we restructure or trade Ryan Kerrigan. With both of them gone, and us having this starting defense, we would still have over $58 million worth of cap space to to spend on offense and save for later when we need to re-sign our 2021 free agents, and what we need to spend now in 2020 to re-sign Eric Flowers and Brandon Scherff. And then in 2020, we'll also be able to escape Alex Smith's contract, which will add like another $20 million in cap space. And also, a side note, with Trent Williams, if he is traded, the Redskins reportedly today are asking for multiple day 2 picks for Trent Williams. So a second and a third, and maybe some more later round picks. And I'm pretty sure the Redskins would then spend Trent Williams-like money, maybe a little more, on getting one of those great free agent tackles this offseason like Anthony Costanzo, or just draft one with the second round draft pick that they would get with trading away Trent Williams. Or even package together some picks to move back up into the first round to get a great tackle that way to replace Trent Williams. But I am so excited about all of these possibilities. And even though the Redskins 2020 defense may not look exactly like these three scenarios, I have faith that it will be something great. I trust Ron Rivera, who had the defensive rankings of 10th, 3rd, 10th again, 6th, and then 7th from 2020 to 2017 to get the job done. And I also super trust Jack Del Rio, who had the defensive rankings of 2nd, 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 6th, 11th, 6th, 2nd, 12th, 6th, 2nd, and then 3rd from 1999 to 2014. From 2012 to 2014, the Jack Del Rio coached Broncos defenses were 3rd in total yards per game allowed, 5th in defensive efficiency, and 1st in total QBR allowed over that 3-season span from 2012 to 2014. In Rio, we trust. I know I do trust. And if there's anybody out there who can help Chase Young become the Hall of Fame player he's destined to be, it's him. Even if our defense looks different from these three scenarios I gave y'all, I trust Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio to get greatness out of whatever group of men they put on the field in 2020 and beyond. But that's enough of me babbling, man. I am so relieved I finally got this video out to y'all. Please get in them comments and let me know how y'all feel about the video. Anything I missed, anything you appreciated, anything you agree with, anything you disagree with, let me know. But I can't even relax now because there's constant Redskins and NFL news coming out with the whole scouting combine going on. Plus, I'm immediately starting to work on the Terry McLaurin video, the Terry McLaurin rookie season tribute video, where I discuss all of his advanced stats and all kinds of things he did and accomplished that people aren't talking about or just plain don't know about. And then I'm going straight into breaking down Scott Turner's Eric Coryell offense that he'll run. So I just broke down the 4-3 defense that the Redskins will run. Then later on, maybe like within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to put out a video discussing the Eric Coryell offense and how that works and how current Redskins players will fit into it and how free agents and draft prospects can fit into that offense to make it even better and stuff like that. Just like this 4-3 video is based around defense, the Eric Coryell will be the offensive side. And then, of course, I'm about to start getting y'all some draft videos. My boy DC Big Oso, y'all requested that I get to y'all the top 5 players of each position in this draft. So, like the top 5 offensive tackles, top 5 guards, top 5 running backs. You already know DeAndre Swift. I'm a Georgia Bulldog. You already know who's number 1 in that category. Top 5 receivers, top 5 quarterbacks, all of that type of stuff. Edge rushes, everything. So, I got to start getting draft videos like that to y'all. I mean, I have so many creative ideas that I need to get to y'all, but I just had these videos in the way. So once I get these videos out the way, we're going to start getting to those videos. And of course, I'm also getting to y'all these consistent Sunday 2 p.m. live streams every Sunday for y'all to pull up and talk about whatever you want to. Even if you're not a Redskins fan, you can pull up and talk about anything going on in the NFL, going on in basketball, draft talk. I mean, we can even get off topic and talk about video games, anime, I mean, all of that stuff. It's just a chill stream that lasts 2 or more hours every Sunday starting at 2 p.m. to where we can just talk about anything. So make sure you pull up to that. Tell anybody you know to also pull up, have some fun, all of that type of stuff. And again, once I get some time, I'm going to figure out how to get a poll system going to where like I'll ask a question and then y'all get to answer in the comments and then it'll actually bring up like a chart or a graph that shows y'all answers. Basically so that one person that answers 5 times, their vote only counts once and y'all will get an actual visual representation of how everybody feels about this specific question and all of that. Just something to make the stream more interactive and everything. And also, I'll probably set it up to where y'all can call in about various things also. So, you know, just a very interactive, chill, fun live stream every Sunday. Make sure y'all pull up. And make sure y'all like this video if you learned anything. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe if you haven't, of course. And I appreciate all of the support. With how many people were requesting this video, it made me work harder to getting it to y'all as soon as possible and making sure it was very accurate, very detailed, and easy to understand. But I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.